I mean, come on, the main character enters into the mind of what seems to resemble the creator of the actual piece of art. Hello everyone, welcome to YouTube Explained, where everything's changed, but nothing really has. My name is Vinny, and we're going to be talking about a YouTube video today. A lot of you will be pleased to know. Now, whether or not you believe that this YouTube video needs an in-depth look or not, I had to display some of Felix Holgrave's work on this channel. I mean, I know a lot of you, according to the survey I did a while back, a lot of you come here to discover new content. Go watch it. It's really, really worth it. And go check out Felix's work. He does some really great stuff. I recommend The Elephant's Garden. Very cool. Double King is cool. It's cool. It's 9 minutes of purely visual storytelling, and really goes to show that, I mean, dialogue just isn't as important as most people think. This video is definitely not as complex as others I've found in the past. It's definitely not a don't hug me, I'm scared type mystery, but consider this more of a interpretation of an already quite clear meaning. Double King definitely has Machiavellian qualities, just like the YouTuber Orion Island pointed out in his video. Fun fact, Machiavelli might not have been as Machiavellian as we've been led to believe, for those of you interested. So what this film really boils down to, its moral, is focus on status and pride will lead to self-destruction. Obsession with the goal, or the idea of the goal, can be really harmful, especially if your perception of said goal is all screwy. Our main character, who we will reference as King Man from now on, is obsessed with becoming the kingliest of kings. He's obsessed with being, you know, the double king, triple, quadruple king. But King Man doesn't really care what this means in real world terms. He doesn't care about the subjects that he's amassing every time he kills another king. He's just obsessed with the status that comes along with conquering these other kings. In the sequence where the crown falls off the goat's head, lands on a cloud, then the cloud becomes kingly, which then rains on a pumpkin, which becomes a pumpkin. And then eventually there's a fly king. It just kind of shows how ridiculous and fickle, you know, this divine power is. Pretty much anything or anyone can inherit it. It's really silly and exposes the power as being quite meaningless. So it's clear that King Man puts this power on a pedestal. Like a spoilt child, he must have the crown. In fact, he pulls such a tantrum after he dies that the King of Death gives him his crown, because it's meaningless. I mean, you know, the King of Death gives him the crown, but he's still the King of Death. It doesn't really change anything. Why does King Man care so much about this power? After he steals the crown from the snake and falls off of a cliff, there's this slow motion section here where we see other creatures that I assume to be the same as him. Same species, same kind of creatures. When you're ruling over somebody, when you supposedly in social terms have a higher rank than another class of people, the most important thing is for them to believe that this power is real. You know, the most important thing to do is to make sure that they stay in line and they respect and acknowledge this power. King Man seems to hail from a people who are quite oppressed, people who hide in the darkness. But if King Man does come from a population of people who are oppressed and who are in fear of this status, of this power given to kings, then of course it would make sense that King Man would be obsessed with this power and obsessed with taking it, that he would be, you know, kind of the sole creature who came out of the cave and actually did something about it. So that is sort of my basic understanding of the story itself, and what is generally the moral, what is generally the meaning. But looking closer now at some of the details, this is my more in-depth interpretation of it. Think about everything that we've been talking about so far, and imagine that the crowns that King Man is accumulating throughout his travels, imagine those crowns to be symbolic of artistic hurdles. The way I see it, this story is about the artistic state of mind. Never being content with what you create. Never being happy, never being satisfied, always wanting more, always wanting to improve. Never wanting to stay where you are. always going after that next piece of whatever you're creating. Really could be anything. When Kingman first puts on the crown, the second crown that is, his pupils dilate as if he'd taken a hefty dose of MDMA. I can only speak from my experience, and I can only try and put myself in Felix's shoes. Creating things is addictive. Creating things is very much like taking a drug. It is a drug. Now, this might sound quite subjective and a bit disjointed, and it kind of is, but I'm just trying to make sense of why Felix would engage in a story like this, because this is a passion project of his that spanned over 2 years. So, to spend a lot of time on something like this, I imagine that he really cared about it. It was something quite close to him, and so I'm trying to see it from that perspective. About halfway through the short, once Kingman has accumulated a few crowns and he's gone through a wormhole into a butterfly realm, we meet the Mountain King. He seems like a force worth fighting, and of course Kingman shows up with a huge fortress in tow, starts boxing. The Mountain King doesn't seem to be awake or alive, really. He doesn't really notice. So Kingman shoots himself out of a cannon and into the mountain. You could say into the Mountain King's head, or into his mind. Here is the Mountain King, and here is Felix, the creator of all of this. The world that he's now entered seems to be one which has disarmed him. He seems quite vulnerable in this new space. All eyes are on him. He travels through the woods, he meets a mushroom creature, very small creature, and he takes his crown, doesn't really know what to do with it because there was no challenge, and it doesn't seem to fit the other crowns which he's accumulated. It doesn't seem to fit his idea of a crown. Seemingly, the idea of not having a crown doesn't really bother this mushroom creature. And then, as if this were some kind of a trap, the parrot appears with its biological crown made of feathers, taunting Kingman and luring him into a field of giant plants. Mistaking the crown on his finger for a crown that he didn't already own, he chops his own finger off. And this is all too perfect. It seems that all these creatures are working in unison to conspire against Kingman. Almost seems like the Mountain King is orchestrating this whole thing. It's as if nature is fighting back. Because this is the one crown that Kingman couldn't have. A real one. Now, Kingman chasing this real biological crown that he simply cannot have could be a symbol of chasing artistic fulfillment, of chasing happiness, of chasing, that thing that's going to fill the hole. True, unreachable happiness. And similarly to Van Gogh, you could say, Kingman ends his own life over it. Side tangent, there are many, many references to psychedelic substances here. Now, I'm not speculating on whether or not the artist has any first-hand experience with any of these. I'm just stating that there are, some connections to be made. Literally, psychedelic substances create connections that usually do not occur within normal brain function. So, of course, there are the mushroom creatures, the small mushrooms with eyes. Then there's the very trippy, flowing animation after Kingman cuts his own finger off. And at one point, the animation seems to turn into a mushroom, and at the same time, Kingman's eyes dilate, or pupils, should I say. I mean, come on, the main character enters into the mind of what seems to resemble the creator of the actual piece of art, and then cuts his own finger off and enters this very psychedelic trance-like state right before he dies. DMT, which is the most potent psychedelic known to man, exists in most living things and is speculated that it potentially floods your brain when you die, and so potentially you end your life with a massive trip. All of these kind of occurrences in this sequence, it's all a bit too specific not to mention the references, that's all. The ending of the short is basically an exaggeration of traits and character personality traits we've seen so far. Faced with death, the Kingman really doesn't care. He doesn't care for the gruesome nature of the hell he's found himself in. He's simply looking for the crown. He wakes up from death as if it's normal, and just heads straight to the crown and, you know, as I said earlier, makes such a fuss that the King of Death gives him his crown and he hurls himself into oblivion. A comedic twist on an otherwise dark tale. Again, if we're going to apply this back to artists or artistic people, or kind of, because I do find that there's quite a common personality trait amongst people that I think are quite artistic. People, I would say, I mean, I think there's a level of creativity in most people. You can be creative in many different kinds of ways. There's not one way to be creative, there's not one way to express yourself artistically. But people who really have a passion for artistic expression and hold that and hold that above most things in their life and really think that's quite important to their existence. I find that they have a common personality trait, which is to feel quite isolated sometimes, to feel quite singular, apart from people, quite, you know, always felt they were different. And so, you know, King Man throwing himself into infinity with his crown that he now has, just him and his crown forever and ever, seems to fit that dynamic in my head. Now, I understand this is quite specific, but this is just the way that I've read it, and maybe you will have read it in a different way, of course, but, you know, this is my job to tell you about the way that I see things. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. See, I'm making more of them. I told you I would, and I am. Go ahead and subscribe for upcoming videos. I swear I'll do stuff that's more recent from, you know, now on, and stuff maybe you haven't heard of as much. It's just that I've been gone for a while, guys. Gotta catch up with some oldies. Go ahead and subscribe for more videos. You know, do the notification. Other YouTubers are telling their fans to do it, so you should do it. If there's any of you fans out there left. I literally lost subscribers this month. The first time in YouTube Explained history. I'm negative. Negative. It's really sad. It's actually quite sad, but understandable, and it's my punishment. It's my punishment. These things take time. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.